All right, here we go. Uh, First and foremost, my apologies to all of you um, because we are going in fits and starts, which is not the ideal way of doing things. There are better ways of doing things, and the better way is that we do it every day. But there are some disadvantages that come with me. One disadvantage, the one that is applicable to everyone, uh, my disadvantage that gets applied to you is that I keep very poor health. And because of that, on many occasions, I am not able to take classes. And this time there was a longish break because of the fact that I kind of had to undergo surgery and all kinds of stuff. So the recovery part took some time. In fact, I've been asked not to do this now, but I really am bored of not doing anything. And also, I'm aware of the responsibility that this course has, the syllabus has been done by me, and so somebody has to teach it. Uh, and as per your this thing, satisfied with what is being done. So, okay, so let's get going. And does anybody remember what we did last time? We ended with something. Does anyone remember that? Hmm? Do you
You
remember?
are telling about Machiavelli, no, sir.
I was telling you about Machiavelli. Oh, no, ma'am. I was, but that was not, uh, Jesus. Uh, that was really not, Machiavelli, I was telling you to tell you that he reintroduced the word politics and all its derivatives, political and everything. He reintroduced it after this particular word went missing from all languages, all governance in Europe, right? And I was telling you the reason. Let's quickly catch up with this so that we can have a thread of continuity. Uh, I was, even though this is about the parliament, I hope you remember that. This is about the parliament, and we are talking about how there are all kinds of misconceptions about the parliament. Right? This is your last paper. In that, we are talking about parliament. Do you remember that? The history
Yes,
of
Yes, sir.
British
sir.
Parliament.
Talked about parliament and also democracy.
Democracy, I haven't started yet. I had just given you a small introduction.
Yes,
Enough introduction, but I can finish it today, I suppose. But what I told you about democracy so far is something which is incidental to our understanding of the evolution of the institutions like, what do we say? the institutions like one second, please. Sorry about that. Yeah, so whatever discussion we've had on democracy so far is basically incidental to this idea of the parliament. And when I asked you what is the parliament right in the beginning, you told me that it's a legislature, right? And I told you the history of the parliament. And in that context, I told you that there was there democracy in any part of Europe in the 11th century? Because it is in the 11th century that the parliament came into being in the year 1066 CE or Common Era. That is when it came into being. Now, where was democracy at that time in Europe? I also told you that what we learn, most of us learn in school and other classes, is we learn that Athens is the place where democracy first took root. And we also say that Athens is where there was a democracy of the direct variety, which is all people of Athens were basically, they were basically taking part in a process called democracy, which is, what is democracy if you ask yourself? What is democracy? Give me the modern definition. You don't have to give me the Greek definition.
People's authority.
Not people's authority. You're close. People ruling themselves. Okay? The word sovereignty, which symbolizes authority, came along with the social contractualists like Hobbes, then Locke, and even Rousseau. They talk about sovereignty. And that is when we talk about democracy as the authority of the people to rule themselves. Okay? So in Athens, did we have a situation when you're saying direct democracy, which means everybody is participating in the process of democracy? Did we have a system like that in ancient Greece, in Athens? The fact is no, we didn't have that kind of a system. What existed in ancient Greece, or rather in Athens, is that which is called it is something which is called an ancient form of aristocracy. Okay, an ancient form of aristocracy was what was there in good old Athens. There was no democracy there. people who belong to Athens, people like Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle, though he didn't belong as such uh, to Athens, he was born in Stagira, which is another Greek province. But he came to Athens for its famous education, which was mainly due to Socrates and Plato, and to a lesser extent, this school of thought, which is called the Sophists, Sophists. Now let's hold that argument there. So if there was no democracy, because Plato calls it mobocracy, Socrates talks about that as mobocracy or mob rule. Even somebody like Aristotle, who believed that Plato was not very correct, despite being the student of Plato, he had his own, what should I say, he had his own disagreements with Aristotle, with Plato, and I must have quoted it because I always do quote this. Aristotle said, much as I love Plato, I love the truth even more. So what he is implying here is that Plato was nowhere near the truth. Truth can be written with a small t, and when you write it with a small t, it is the opposite of a lie, okay? Of a lie or something which is incorrect, deliberately incorrect. That is truth with a small t. If you write it with a big T, then it becomes the principle that makes the world what it is. So when somebody says that I'm trying to understand this world, its origins, the reasons why it persists, and the reasons why we are here, that kind of a thing is the pursuit of truth with a capital T. That is something that you'll find even in ancient philosophy of India. All ancient philosophies, actually, especially India and Greece, they had this particular notion of the truth originating somewhere. And when you understand that, then you know how the universe works. Okay? So even Aristotle was searching for the truth with a capital T, despite his disagreements with Plato. Okay, so there was no democracy anywhere in any part of ancient Greece. Whatever was there was, like I said, different variations on an aristocratic rule, or sometimes some kind of a military rule that, not military rule as we understand it today, but as the rule of the military commanders in the case of Sparta. Okay, but nowhere was there democracy in ancient Greece. And if you look at the whole idea, if you basically look at the whole idea of people trying to understand what the world was, they were not looking for democracy as a possible beginning for investigation into why the world comes into being and how does it sustain. People were not actually trying to get into any other understanding. And democracy didn't figure anywhere in their understanding of things. Okay, so now for us, democracy is sacrosanct. Okay, we say without democracy, if you're looking at something, then there is something wrong with that country. At the height of the Cold War between the erstwhile USSR and the USA said we are a democratic nation. We are a democratic nation that believes in the freedom of every individual. We are not like the Soviet Union, which wants to have an authoritarian system of ruling in the garb of communism. So they portrayed democracy as the opposite of, what should we say? They portrayed it as the opposite of communism, dictatorship, fascism that happened in Italy, Nazism that happened in Germany. So they put democracy as the opposite of all these extreme forms of rule, which denied people their rights, their freedoms. So therefore, democracy suddenly became sacred more than it did in the 16th century when it actually originated. It originated in the 16th century, but this sanctity that was given to democracy in the 20th century wasn't there before. So now what I'm trying to tell you is that every word, every concept that we have has a history. We have to understand the history of that particular concept. Why does it mean what it means to us today? So when you're talking about a causal analysis, let us say, for a moment, a causal analysis is where you're trying to understand things in terms of cause and effect. Okay? If you're trying to understand things in terms of cause and effect, then that is called a causal explanation or a cause-effect explanation of how something or why something has happened. Okay? So if we're looking at this kind of a thing, then what are we saying? Okay? Did democracy cause the form of government that we have today? The answer is no. So, Parliament, I told you, was a place where people spoke to each other. But you and I sitting in a room and talking to each other doesn't mean that it's a parliament. It acquires a technical meaning. In French, the root word of parliament is parler, P-A-R-L-E-R. Okay, parler, and to speak would be parlement. Okay, so if you want to tell somebody that you do not know how to speak French, you'll say je ne parle pas, je ne parle français, which is I don't know how to speak French. That's what it means. So, so when we are looking at these ideas as such, please remember that ideas change their meaning through its time, they mutate, and if you go and put something from the present in the past, or something from the past which is not there now and put it in the present, then you're creating what is called an anachronism. A-N-A-C-H-R-O-N-I-S-M. What is an anachronism? An anachronism is the breaking of a sequence. Okay, it's the breaking of a sequence. What sequence is it? Time sequence. Because in Greek, chronos, C-H-R-O-N-O-S, actually means time. Chronology is doing things according to the sequence of time. So when you break that sequence of time, then that becomes an anachronism. It becomes a complete anachronism. Like if you say Gandhi in ancient Greece, that's an anachronism. Why? You didn't have Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi in ancient Greece. It didn't happen even in ancient India. So even if you say Gandhi in ancient India, even that is an anachronism. Similarly, if you say Plato in modern Greece, that is also not viable chronologically. It becomes an anachronism. So breaking of the chronological chain, which is what the cause and effect sequencing is relying upon. If you break that, then you're creating anachronisms, and those will become inexplicable. They will become inexplicable. If there was democracy in Athens, why aren't people talking about democracy in the Roman Empire? Why are people not talking about a democracy in medieval period of Europe, which is dominated by the Christians? And more importantly, why aren't people talking about politics in the Roman period, which immediately followed the Greek period? Why aren't they talking about it in the medieval period, till the end of the medieval period, which is when Machiavelli re-invokes that particular word? Okay, now you might ask the question, why is it that Machiavelli re-invokes a word that didn't exist for centuries? It didn't exist in the language of the people for something like nearly 10 or 12 centuries. So why didn't anybody think of that word before Machiavelli? Why does Machiavelli talk about this? So if you look at history, the origins of politics, political, they are all to be found in this one word, polis. I told you this, Polis. And I told you that a polis should not be translated as a state, because the polis that existed in ancient Greece is neither a city as we know it, nor is it a state as we know it. Both the city and the state are modern institutions. Hyderabad is a state, is a city. Is Latur a city? Anyone who's heard of Latur? It's not. This is something is a village. So what is it that you associate with the city? You associate technological development. You associate great roads. If you're living in Hyderabad, you will be looking forward to February 11th and 12th, 2 days when the whole traffic will be jammed in the city because Formula E cars will be racing around on the NTR mark, in front of the Prasad's IMAX and the Secretariat Road. Okay, this is development. And we are very proud of the fact that Hyderabad is the first city in India to host the Formula E car races. E is electricity. These cars run purely on electricity. That is development. Having no power cuts is development. Having to travel great distances is a city which has developed. Having a metro is development. These are all parts of the city. Did any of the ancient Greek provinces or police, P-O-L-E-I-S, pronounced police, not police, did any of them have this? No. What was the polis? The polis was basically a number of what we call villages today, or to use a neutral word, settlements of people, small settlements of people around a certain radius, and they would be somewhere near the center of all these different unconnected settlements. There in the middle, you'll have a mound or a hillock, and on that, you build a structure where the civilized people will come and discuss matters. So that is called the Acropolis. The one that is there in the center, that mound, that hillock, call it whatever you want, that is the Acropolis. And discussions took place not among everybody. Slaves were not allowed. Those who were not politai, P-O-L-I-T-A-I, is a rough equivalent of citizens. Okay, a very rough equivalent of what we say citizens today. Only the politai could attend the meetings. Others couldn't. those who were uneducated couldn't get in. So where is this direct democracy? So who's ruling ultimately? Ultimately, they used to be about 10 or 12 people. Okay, 10 or 12 people, or maybe 20, who would sit and discuss things regarding the polis called Athens. So this was politics, and it was not a bad word. Today, if you say politics, it's a very bad word, right? George Bernard Shaw said, politics is the last refuge of the scoundrel. So if you say somebody is a politician, then you automatically are saying that he's a scoundrel. You don't call a good person a politician. If you're going to be talking about Manmohan Singh, people sympathetically say he was a good man. Why did he get into politics? Why did he tarnish his name by getting into politics? Right? So that is how we look at politics today, but that's not how the Greeks looked at it. The Greeks had a completely different view of politics. The view that the Greeks had of politics is that it was an activity that would lead to greater and greater enlightenment among those people who are in charge of ruling the polis or the politai, getting enlightened rationally, not in any way, but rationally. You become a, a better politai, and you have a better system of governance, not government. The difference is governance is a process, whereas government is basically a, what do you say? It's institutions. Okay. Today, a parliament is a part of the government. Then the executive, all these things are a part of the government. Some people have also started calling the government and its various organs political society. Okay, don't use that term. It hasn't caught on, so please don't use it yet. Okay, civil society is supposed. This is a word that is caught on, unfortunately. This phrase that is caught on, and people use it as they like. And they say government is political society. It's not either. So now, if you look at Aristotle, Aristotle believed that man's transformation from a social animal to a political animal represented his movement from a primary natural potential to a finished form. I'll explain this later. I'll do this in that other paper, which is political thought, right? So that for him, that transformation for him is basically what you will see as, what should I say? That particular transformation is what you will see as a very good thing, people becoming rational. So he said, good politai, Politai, good politai breed a good polis, Polis, and in turn, a good polis will breed good politai. And this kind of rule that you have is basically what he called polity. So till Aristotle, even in ancient Greece, nobody used the word polity. So polity has a very, very specific meaning. And it's a funny thing today that when you go to write a civil service examination or something, people are asking you a question where they're saying, Indian polity. We don't have a polity. Where do we have a polity? We are a nation state. There's no question of us being, there's no country in the world which can be called a polity. You are either a nation state like India, or you are a city state like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Singapore. These are city states. Okay. So nation state is a modern phenomenon. Modern is something that starts in the 16th century. And state is also a phenomenon that comes into being in the modern period. Machiavelli's contribution to that is what we had discussed. Now, if we say that there was no democracy in ancient Greece, then why talk about and there's no mention of the word democracy elsewhere. What were these things replaced by? Okay, so let me give you one small example. Aristotle uses this particular phrase in Greek. The phrase is koinonia politike, Koinoina, pronounced koinonia, not koinoina. Okay, koinonia politike, Politike. Koinonia politike is something which is in the nature of an enlightened polis, and the people who constitute that polis. That is koinonia politike. Now, Greece, ancient Greece has 4 phases. I'll tell you about them later. The last phase, which tells us about the degeneration of Greece and it dies, and its death, is actually called, the basic thing that it is called is the Hellenistic phase. Okay, because the Greek civilization is not a thing that was at one place. The starting is in Miletus, which is on the Ionian seashore, and the end is in the end of the Greek civilization is in what should I say? It is in the Hellenes, the area, which is the Hellenistic Sea. So it ends there. It loses all its glory. It becomes a pessimistic civilization, and loses all its glory. And that is when ancient Greece was replaced by Rome. Now, when Rome started, it didn't start as an empire, by the way. It started as an ancient republic. Now, republic is when people are ruling themselves, roughly speaking. Okay. In the modern sense, republic means something else. In a modern sense, it means something else, but not completely different. It is people ruling themselves, but not the way the Greeks saw, sorry, the Romans saw a republic. Okay, so the Romans saw a republic with a triumvirate, which was in charge of governance. Even in the Roman period, there is no government, it is governance, basically. So what is a triumvirate? There are three bodies, not human or some body. There are three bodies, as in three, if you like, kind of structures, which basically rule the ancient Roman Republic. The first body is that which is called the Senate, and the Senate comprised of eminent citizens of Rome, ancient Rome. The second body is that which is called the magistrates chamber, because what we call judiciary is again not what the Romans called magistrates. Even today we call our district collector. Up north they call him district magistrate. So that is a different thing. A magistrate and a judge are not interchangeable anymore. Okay, so a magistrate was a person who was capable of good judgment between right and wrong, between good and bad, and all those things. So it comprised of magistrates. The third was a ruler who had to stick to what was decided by the Senate and the magistrates. If he had a proposal of his own, he had to get it passed by the Senate and the magistrates, especially the Senate. This system is the ancient Roman system. In this particular system, what we see is there is some kind of self-rule of the people, but not all people again. Okay, so people were trying to justify this system with the idea of Aristotle, which is the Koinonia Politicae. Now they faced a problem. Politicae, they didn't find an institution in Rome to coincide with polis. There was no polis in the Roman period. Politicae again comes out of polis, so they didn't find politicae. Koinonia, they didn't find at all, which is enlightened rationality. So what did they do? They translated this into something that they were comfortable with. So the Latin translation of the Greek Koinonia Politicae is Societas Civilis. Okay, Societas Civilis, which in English becomes civil society. But Societas Civilis also doesn't survive for very long, even in the Roman Empire. Once Julius Caesar, that's his name, Caesar is not a designation. Once Julius Caesar starts ruling as an emperor, then there is no question of Societas Civilis. Rome had become a completely military civilization. Totally military civilization. So you see this expression also disappearing. What you had was the Roman Empire until Marcus Aurelius And Marcus Aurelius basically, at some point he says that you should not have one person ruling, you should have 2 or 3 people, because Marcus Aurelius, though he was an emperor, he was not alone. He and his stepbrother, Pius, were the people who ruled Rome. And when Pius passed away, Marcus Aurelius was saying that it is time that Rome consider another system. Okay, and this is post Julius Caesar. And it was Augustus who took on Caesar in order to make himself look like Julius Caesar. And that Caesar is what the Russians corrupted to Tsar, C-Z-A-R. Tsar for the Russians was Caesar. And the Germans corrupted it to Kaiser, K-A-I-S-E-R. Okay, so those became designations, but otherwise it was just a name. Now, so when people couldn't translate something like Societas Civilis, what remained was empire, and people were using empire. Okay, so the mutation of language also depends upon the history of several locations in the world. The history of several locations in the world also contribute to the mutation of the language. In English, for example, there was no word like civil society or no expression like civil society till the 16th century when John Locke created it. He took it out of the Roman Empire and created that particular expression. Okay, and said civil society. What is his civil society? Civil society for Locke is not the whole society of civilized people. For him, civilized society is of those who are rational. How do you recognize who is rational and who is not? The criterion was property. Okay, property. In Aristotle, when he is talking about koinonia politicae, how is he judging rationality? He is judging rationality according to the understanding of ethics that people had. They had to be ethically learned. But by the time it becomes civil society in English, it becomes the society of those who have property. So when you're looking at all these different terms, what you basically need to understand is that there is a history behind every evolution. Otherwise, there would have been no evolution of the terms. And another thing that you have to remember is the dynamism of language, which keeps up or tries to keep up, not always successful in keeping up, tries to keep up with the evolutionary process of human civilization in various parts of the world. In various parts of the world. It tries to keep up, but it doesn't keep up. Simple example, politics. In India, ask somebody to translate it into Hindi. Rajniti. Now translate it into English. Raj, kingship. Niti. What is Niti? Anybody? Niti Shastras? Niti is ethics, morals. So Rajniti is ruling according to the morals prescribed for the king. That is Rajniti. So that's why there is a Rajaniti Shastra. That is why there is a Rajaniti Shastra. So you see, we call it Rajniti, but it has nothing to do with politics. The way in which it is understood even today by the Western civilization, or back then by the old Greek and Roman civilizations. So when we are using terms, we have to be extremely careful. We have to be very, very careful. Otherwise, we send out wrong meanings. Now, if there is no possibility of creating a term like polis and polity, then perhaps you have no choice but to say Rajaniti Shastra. So, please remember that all these words that we are encountering today have their history in the past, and they were not what we think they were. They were not what we think they were. And even if they existed, first of all, if they existed, they were not what we think they were. The second thing is, most of them didn't exist. We create anachronisms along the way. So I'll stop here today. I am not well, so that's the reason why I'm fiddling. But I thought I will take the class. And I will take the class, but it's apparently not me who's fidgeting and fiddling around in the chair. The others, 6 people have left, I think, out of boredom. But then I told you my classes are boring, didn't I? Okay. All right, so go and have some fun. Are you coming tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you
Yes,
are
sir.
right, if you are coming tomorrow, then we will take it forward further. So we finished with Parliament anyway, so we'll get into how democracy evolved. Okay. We've done a part of it. We'll do the part which we have not done till now. That part we'll pick up. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow
Thank you, sir.
at 7:30.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.